It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can shatter everything you thought you knew about someone, especially someone you've shared a lifetime with. I found my seat at my sister's wedding, not at a beautifully decorated table inside, surrounded by family and friends, but outside, next to the overflowing trash cans, tucked away as if I were some kind of embarrassing secret. She smirked at me, a cold, almost triumphant look in her eyes, and said, "Guess you don't count." I can still hear the words echoing in my head. Was I wrong for what I did next? For taking my gift, standing up, and walking out without a word? Or would you have done the exact same thing, even if it meant tearing apart the last threads of a broken sisterhood? Let me take you back to where it all began, long before the trash cans and the smirk. My sister, Clara, and I grew up in a small town. Our lives intertwined in that way only siblings can understand. We were close, or at least I always thought we were. She was 2 years older than me, and as kids, I adored her. She was the one who taught me how to ride my bike, how to sneak cookies from the jar without getting caught, and how to stand up to the neighborhood bullies. We shared a bedroom, secrets whispered late into the night, and dreams of our futures. Our parents, bless their hearts, always tried to treat us equally, but Clara had a way of commanding attention. She was the more outgoing, the more vivacious, the one who effortlessly drew people to her. I was, by comparison, the quieter one, the bookworm, perfectly content to live in her shadow. I didn't mind it then. I saw it as a privilege to be close to such a dazzling person. As we entered our teenage years, a subtle shift began to occur. Clara became more competitive, especially when it came to boys and popularity. I started to notice small digs, thinly veiled compliments that felt more like insults. If I got a good grade, she'd remark, "Oh, you must have studied really hard," unlike some of us who actually have a social life. If I wore a new outfit, she'd say, "That's interesting." I could never pull that off, but you do you. At first, I brushed it off, attributing it to typical sibling rivalry. But over time, these small cuts started to add up, leaving a lingering sting. I tried to talk to her about it once, gently, asking if everything was okay between us. She just laughed and told me I was being overly sensitive, that I needed to lighten up. So, I did. I suppressed my feelings, convinced myself she didn't mean any harm, and kept trying to be the supportive sister she always expected me to be. When we both went off to college, we ended up at different universities, which I secretly hoped would give us space to grow as individuals and maybe even mend some of the underlying tension. For a while, it seemed to work. Our calls were less frequent, but when we did speak, the conversations felt lighter, less laden with unspoken resentments. She pursued a career in marketing, always chasing the next big promotion, the next flashy achievement. I, on the other hand, found my passion in wildlife conservation, a field that offered far less in terms of material wealth but filled my soul with purpose. I worked hard, often in remote locations, and found immense satisfaction in my work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was profoundly meaningful to me. Clara, however, seemed to view my career choice with a mixture of pity and disdain. "So, you're still playing with dirt? Huh?" She'd quip during our rare family gatherings. "Must be nice to not have any real responsibilities." I'd just smile and try to change the subject, tired of defending my choices. The comments chipped away at me, but I refused to let them diminish my love for what I did. I tried to celebrate her successes, even if they felt miles away from my own world. When she got her first big promotion, I sent her a thoughtful gift. When she bought her fancy new apartment in the city, I drove hours to help her move, even though she barely lifted a finger herself. I always showed up, always tried to be there for her, even when it felt like she rarely reciprocated. Then came the engagement announcement. Clara had met Daniel, a charming, successful man from a prominent family. He was everything she had ever talked about wanting in a partner: handsome, wealthy, and well-connected. I was genuinely happy for her, truly. I called her immediately, overflowing with congratulations and offers to help with wedding planning. I envisioned us two sisters picking out dresses, tasting cakes, and sharing the joy of this monumental occasion. My excitement was palpable. Her response, however, was muted. "Oh, thanks. she said almost dismissively. Yeah, we're thinking something really exclusive, very high-end. Daniel's family has a lot of connections, so we want to make it perfect. She didn't ask for my input, didn't invite me to look at venues, didn't even mention bridesmaid, dresses. I figured she was just overwhelmed, that she'd get around to it. I waited. And waited. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Every time I brought up the wedding, she'd give vague answers or quickly change the subject. It started to sting, the feeling of being excluded, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she wanted a small, intimate bridal party, just her closest friends. I tried to be understanding. Finally, about 3 months before the wedding, I received the invitation in the mail. It was a beautiful, embossed card, very formal. My name was there, clearly indicating I was invited. But there was no mention of me being a bridesmaid, no special role, just a guest. It was a disappointment, but I swallowed it. I still loved my sister, and I wanted to be there to witness her big day. I immediately started looking for a dress, something elegant and appropriate, and began thinking about a wedding gift. I wanted it to be something special, something that conveyed my love and best wishes, despite the growing distance between us. Around this time, my work took me on an extended field trip to a remote region, far off the grid. I was gone for several weeks, completely cut off from the outside world. No phone service, no internet, just me and my research team deep in the wilderness. It was exhilarating, but it also meant I was out of touch during a crucial period of wedding planning. I had informed Clara about my trip months in advance, assuring her I'd be back in plenty of time for the wedding. She'd simply nodded and said, "Okay, cool. No, be safe. No, I'll miss you." Just, "Okay, cool." When I finally returned, jet-lagged but invigorated, I had a mountain of emails and voicemails to catch up on. Among them was a cryptic message from my mother, sounding a little stressed. "Call me about Clara's wedding seating, honey. There's been a mix-up." A mix-up? My heart sank a little. I called her back, and she explained, hesitantly, that Clara had finalized the seating chart during my absence. Apparently, there wasn't a spot for me at any of the main family tables. My mother had tried to intervene, to no avail. "Clara said something about you being away, and it just got missed," my mom explained, her voice tinged with concern. "She said she'd find a spot for you, but it might not be ideal." "Not ideal?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "Mom, what does that mean?" "Well," she sighed. "She said there was an overflow table just outside the reception tent for guests who RSVP'd late or had last-minute additions. She said it was the only option." My stomach churned. An overflow table? Outside? For me, her sister? It felt like a deliberate slight, not a mix-up. But I pushed the feeling down. It was her wedding day, her special occasion. I would not cause a scene. I would be the bigger person. I told my mom it was fine, that I understood, and that I just wanted to be there for Clara. I tried to convince myself it was truly an oversight, a logistical error. But deep down, a little voice whispered, she knew what she was doing. Despite the growing apprehension, I put a lot of thought into my wedding gift. I knew Clara and Daniel were set financially, so a typical registry gift felt impersonal. I wanted something meaningful, something that spoke to our shared history, even if it felt fractured. I decided to commission a local artist to create a beautiful, framed silhouette portrait of Clara and me as children, holding hands, our childhood dog at our feet. It was meticulously crafted, delicate, and poignant, a reminder of a time when our bond felt unbreakable. I carefully wrapped it, chose a beautiful card, and wrote a heartfelt message, expressing my love and hopes for her future, despite everything. The wedding day arrived, bright and sunny, almost mockingly perfect. I dressed carefully, picked a lovely floral dress, and drove to the venue, a stunning estate nestled in rolling hills. As I pulled into the Trizote's parking lot, my heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and dread. I saw familiar faces, friends and relatives, all elegantly dressed, making their way towards the grand reception tent. I felt a familiar pang of loneliness, knowing I wouldn't be amongst them at the main tables. I made my way through the bustling crowd, past the beautifully decorated archway where the ceremony had taken place, and towards the reception area. The tent was a vision of white and gold, glittering with fairy lights and overflowing with flowers. Laughter and music spilled out, creating an atmosphere of joyous celebration. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was observing a scene I wasn't truly a part of. I looked for my name on the seating chart display, scrolling down and down, until I found it. Table 17. Outdoor terrace. Outdoor terrace. That's what they called it. I walked towards the back of the tent, following the faint arrow, and there it was. A small, round table, conspicuously, separated from the main festivities. It was indeed outside, tucked away behind a row of bushes. And right beside it, an undeniable truth, the venue's large industrial trash cans overflowing with discarded bottles, crumpled napkins, and food waste from the cocktail hour. The air around the table carried a faint, unpleasant odor. My seat was directly facing them, a prime view of the refuse. There were a few other people at the table, distant cousins I barely knew, and an elderly couple who looked as confused and out of place as I felt. We exchanged awkward smiles. But my eyes kept drifting to the trash cans, then back to the grand, vibrant tent just meters away, yet a world apart. A cold wave of humiliation washed over me. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. This was Clara, making a statement. Just then, Clara herself emerged from the tent, looking radiant in her stunning white gown, her new husband Daniel by her side. She was greeting guests, a dazzling smile plastered on her face. Her eyes swept over the outdoor terrace, and then they landed on me. For a split second, her smile faltered, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Then, it was replaced by that cold, almost triumphant smirk I mentioned earlier. She walked over, Daniel still beaming beside her, oblivious. "Oh, there you are," she said, her voice sugary sweet, but with an edge that cut like glass. "Found your seat, then?" I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with emotion. "Good," she continued, her eyes sweeping over the trash cans, then back to me, lingering for a moment, enjoying my discomfort. "Honestly, with you being off-grid for so long, we just couldn't fit you in anywhere else. So many important guests, you know? Guess you don't count for much in the grand scheme of things, do you?" The words hung in the air, a final, definitive blow. Guess you don't count. All the years of subtle digs, the dismissive comments about my career, the constant feeling of being less than, less important, less loved, it all coalesced into that one brutal sentence. It wasn't just about the seat, it was about every slight, every moment she had made me feel insignificant. And to say it on her wedding day, in front of her new husband and other guests, cemented it. This wasn't about a lack of space. It was about a lack of respect. A profound disregard for me as her sister. My vision blurred slightly, but I refused to cry. I would not give her the satisfaction. I looked down at the carefully wrapped silhouette portrait, the gift I had poured my heart into, sitting on the empty chair beside me. A gift meant to remind us of a bond she had just irrevocably severed. I felt a sudden, fierce clarity. I had spent my entire life trying to be the supportive, understanding sister, constantly making excuses for her behavior, bending over backward to maintain a relationship that was clearly one-sided. But this was the absolute limit. This was a public declaration that I was worthless to her. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I could sit there, swallow my pride, endure the humiliation, and pretend everything was fine. I could pretend I didn't see the trash cans, didn't hear her cruel words, didn't feel the sting of her dismissal. I could stay for the rest of the night, eat the food, and watch her dance, all while that bitter taste of worthlessness lingered in my mouth. Or I could take a stand, for myself, for the dignity she had just stripped away. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stayed, or would you have walked away? What is your breaking point? I took a deep breath, and a calm, almost surreal sense of resolve settled over me. I looked at Clara, who was now turning to address Daniel, a self-satisfied smile still playing on her lips. She thought she had won. She thought she had put me in my place. But she hadn't. She had just freed me. Without saying a word, I reached down, picked up the beautifully wrapped silhouette portrait, my gift, the symbol of a sisterhood that no longer existed. It felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. I held it for a moment, looking at the elegant wrapping paper, the bow I had carefully tied. Then, very slowly, very deliberately, I stood up from my seat by the trash cans. My movement caught Clara's eye, and she turned back to me, her smirk faltering slightly, a flicker of curiosity now mixed with her triumph. I walked past her, past Daniel, my gaze fixed straight ahead. I didn't make eye contact. I didn't pause. I simply walked. The other guests at my overflow table looked at me, some with pity, some with understanding. I walked past the edge of the tent, past the main reception, and towards the pathway leading to the parking lot. The weight of the gift in my hands felt like a tangible representation of all the emotional baggage I was finally shedding. I reached my car, opened the trunk, and gently, but firmly, placed the gift inside. I didn't throw it. I didn't smash it. It was too beautiful, too full of what had been. But it wasn't for her anymore. Not after what she had done. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back. The entire process, from standing up to driving off, took perhaps 5 minutes. It was silent, deliberate, and utterly final. I drove for a while, the silence in the car broken only by the hum of the engine. The initial surge of adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a quiet ache. I knew I had done the right thing for myself, but it still hurt. It was the end of an era, the definitive severing of a bond I had clung to for so long, despite all the pain it had caused. I found a quiet spot by a lake, parked, and just sat there, watching the water ripple under the afternoon sun. I allowed myself to feel the sadness, the anger, the profound disappointment. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, things were apparently unfolding in a rather dramatic fashion. What I didn't know, and what Clara certainly didn't expect, was the significance of my gift, not just to me, but to her new in-laws, Daniel's parents. You see, Daniel's family, while wealthy, also had a deep appreciation for art and heritage. They were known for collecting unique, meaningful pieces. And they were especially fond of silhouette art, a passion of Daniel's mother, Eleanor. Daniel had mentioned this to Clara in passing, a detail she had probably dismissed as irrelevant. Minutes after I left, when Clara had finally returned to the main reception, she realized that many of the guests, including some of Daniel's more distant relatives, had noticed my ignominious seating arrangement. Whispers had started. Isn't that her sister? Why is she sitting by the trash cans? How rude. The atmosphere, which had been perfectly festive, was now tinged with an undercurrent of awkwardness. Daniel, bless his heart, had been too caught up in the moment to notice my specific seat, but even he began to pick up on the subtle shift in mood. As Clara started making her way to the head table, Daniel's mother, Eleanor, approached her, a concerned look on her face. Clara, dear, she began. I couldn't help but notice. Where's your sister? And what was that about an overflow table? Clara, still basking in the glow of her perceived triumph, waved a dismissive hand. Oh, Mom, Eleanor, don't worry about her. She was just being dramatic. She got a little upset about her seating, but honestly, she was off on some nature trip and didn't confirm her attendance properly. We just had no space. She probably expected Eleanor to nod understandingly and move on, but Eleanor didn't. Instead, her eyes narrowed. That's rather unfortunate, Clara, especially since Daniel mentioned your sister was commissioning that silhouette portrait. He was so excited about it. We have quite a collection, you know, and he spoke so highly of the artist she found. Clara's face, which had been flushed with bridal glow, suddenly went pale. The silhouette portrait? Daniel knew about that, and his mother was interested in it, the insignificant gift from her insignificant sister. She had completely forgotten. The implications of what she had done, and what she had lost, started to dawn on her. The gift, the one she had so easily dismissed, was actually highly prized by her new, influential in-laws. She had not only publicly humiliated her sister, but she had also inadvertently insulted Daniel's family by showing such a blatant disregard for something they valued. Suddenly, the cold, hard reality hit her. She hadn't just gotten rid of a problematic sister. She had potentially jeopardized her standing with her new family. She had been so consumed by her petty need to put me down, to assert her superiority, that she had overlooked a critical social detail. The portrait? Clara stammered, her voice losing its sugary sweetness, a hint of panic entering it. Oh, yes, the portrait. It's around here somewhere, I'm sure. She started frantically looking around, her eyes darting from table to table, realizing with a sickening lurch that she hadn't even seen me bring it in. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, a clear sign of disapproval. Around somewhere? Clara, your sister just left. Did she take it with her? At that moment, Daniel, having heard parts of the conversation, came over, his initial joy replaced by a growing concern. What's going on? Mom, Clara? Your sister just left, Daniel, Eleanor stated, her voice calm but firm. And it seems she took the commissioned portrait with her, the one you mentioned. Your wife here seems to have overlooked its importance, to put it mildly. Daniel turned to Clara, his expression aghast. Clara, what happened? You said you sorted out the seating. Why would my sister-in-law leave? And the portrait? You know, how much my mom loves those. The weight of her actions, the humiliation, the potential damage to her carefully constructed image, all crashed down on Clara. She looked around, realizing that more and more eyes were now on her, not with admiration for her beautiful wedding, but with judgment. Her grand plan to diminish me had backfired spectacularly. She had wanted to make me feel invisible, but by doing so, she had drawn a glaring spotlight on her own cruelty and lack of grace. She saw the looks, she heard the whispers, and she understood, in that agonizing moment, that she had played herself. Her face, which had been pale, now contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury and desperation. She realized the full extent of her miscalculation, the social faux pas, the personal damage she had inflicted not just on me, but on her own reputation and her standing with her new in-laws. She thought she was being clever, asserting dominance, but all she had done was expose her true character. And then, just as the realization fully sank in, as the weight of her mistake pressed down on her, she threw her head back. Right there in the middle of her supposedly perfect wedding reception, and she screamed. A long, guttural, angry scream that cut through the music and laughter, silencing the entire tent. It wasn't a cry of sorrow or remorse. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated rage and mortification. She screamed because she had been outmaneuvered, because her carefully constructed facade had crumbled, and because, for the first time in her life, her petty cruelty had cost her something significant, something she truly valued, her perfect image. I never heard from Clara directly after that day. Not an apology, not an explanation. My mother later told me, very carefully, that the atmosphere at the wedding had become incredibly tense after Clara's outburst. Daniel's parents had been distinctly unimpressed, and the incident cast a shadow over the entire event. Apparently, Clara tried to spin it as me being overly sensitive, but the story had already spread, and the sight of her screaming bride, right there in front of everyone, spoke volumes. My relationship with my parents became a little strained for a while. They felt caught in the middle, and while they eventually understood my reasons for leaving, they mourned the loss of a harmonious family dynamic. But, for me, walking away from that wedding, from that seat by the trash cans, was the most liberating thing I had ever done. It was a recognition that I deserved respect, that my worth wasn't dependent on Clara's approval, and that I was no longer willing to tolerate her relentless devaluing of me. I continued with my conservation work, pouring my energy into something truly fulfilling. I surrounded myself with people who genuinely appreciated and respected me, and I built a life that was rich in meaning and devoid of toxicity. The silhouette portrait? It's now hanging in my own home, a beautiful, poignant reminder not of a broken sisterhood, but of my own strength and resilience. It serves as a quiet monument to a past that I have learned to acknowledge, and then, finally, to let go of. So, that's my story. It's a messy one, filled with years of unspoken hurt and a sudden dramatic ending. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who continuously diminishes you, even if that person is family. What are your thoughts on this whole mess? Were you on my side? Would you have done the same? If this story resonated with you, If you've ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own peace, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, where we explore the complex, often painful, and sometimes surprisingly liberating corners of human relationships. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section below. I read every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.